Good morning, everyone. This Saturday night, we have the return of Fabio Wardley at Ipswich Town, Portman Road. This should have been, as you know, against Jarrell Big Farmer Miller. Apparently, Big Farmer Miller had some issues. We don't know what they are. We can only speculate what they are. We have a story, but we don't know whether we believe that. So this should have been Big Baby Miller, and a lot of people are debating whether this is a harder fight or an easier fight than Miller. Miller would have posed a lot of problems. Miller is right there in front of him. He would have been tailor-made for Fabio in that sense, in that he would be there to catch punches and eat leather all night. But he has a great chin, does Big Farmer, and a great engine. He showed that against Daniel Dubois, and kind of gained a bit of, not respect because we all know he's a stinking drugs cheat, but respect in the way that, the guy can actually fight. The guy's got a bit of heart, and he's got a good chin, and he's got a good engine. So we don't have Miller anymore. We have Justin Huni steps in. Justin Huni, a very decorated amateur. Not really done a lot as a pro, not really for any sort of level. But when I look at Justis Huni, I can see, now I don't class Justin Huni as having a particularly sort of all-out amateur style that we say, he's a good amateur style, but he's not transitioned over. I just think he's got a good style, and I can see why that he was a good amateur going on the attributes that he's got. He's got fast hands. He puts punches together really well. He's got really fast feet, and he can change up the angles and move around very well and create himself different angles and different looks. Fabio Wardley's last win, the Fraser Clark rematch, I honestly don't think we should look at anything into that, because that didn't show us anything. Didn't show us anything that we didn't already know. Fabio Wardley, massively concussive puncher, still a little crude in areas. So we can only really go on the Fabio Wardley Fraser Clark first fight, in which Fraser Clark, and I got to say, I'm a massive Fabio Wardley fan. I always have done. I've made sort of a standalone video on Fabio before. He's from my area of the country, so I'm a big Fabio Wardley fan. But I did say after the first Fraser Clark fight, unless he looks at the issues around his defence and some of the ways he attacks as well, but especially that defence, the way he likes to take punches. Well, no one likes taking punches, but the way he does take punches, because there's not really much of a cultured defence there, he's going to have serious issues as he moves up in class. Now, I don't really see Justis Huni really being a jump from Fraser Clark, if I'm honest. But Fabio Wardley, nonetheless, has he made the improvements from the first Fraser Clark fight? Because, as I said, we don't count the second one because we didn't see anything. There was no fight, in essence. Fabio Wardley, he's worked with Ben Davison, and a lot of Ben Davison fighters, Anthony Joshua did this, and Daniel Dubois combated it brilliantly by planning for it. They really do like the layback, sorry, I'm a lefty, the layback right hand over the top. And the layback right hand over the top, or right hand over the top of the jab, or the incoming right hand, is really one of the most basic moves you learn. It's one of the first sort of offensive moves you really learn, is the layback right hand over the top. And they like to do that. They really, really do like to do that. All the fighters that you see have had any connection with Ben Davison do like to do that. And Fabio does like to do that as well. He does, when he gets tired as well, and if he's got enough room behind it, he does like to back up in straight lines, which is always dangerous. You don't need me to tell you that. But there is a lot. He will back up in straight lines with his head in the air. Fabio also has a wide stance where his arms are out to the side, so he does present a lot of target for his opponent, because guys who like to keep it tight, you're certainly covering a certain degree of that target already, but when you have your arms wide, there's a lot there, and it also takes longer to get those punches out as well. Justis Huni, on the other hand, he's very, very neat. He's very neat. He's very tidy. As I said, he throws combinations really well. He's got very quick hands, and he can sort of change the angle at a moment's notice with his footwork. Ricky Hatton used to get inside and he used to move around the side, throw that, and he'd move around, change the angle. Justis does this very well. But one of the major disadvantages for Justis Huni for me is, after he's thrown those flashy combinations, his hands are nowhere. They really do always come back to below the nipple, which is a bit suicidal. And I've never really seen him rectify this. He can look good in spades, but when you bring those hands back to where you are, you're against a seriously big puncher. One of the other things in this fight, which is going to be interesting, is you've got a really sort of technically correct, well-schooled amateur was. Now he's a professional. But he's very correct in what he does. A lot of the things are very textbook correct, which is great. But they don't always bode well against someone, say a Fabio Wardley, who isn't as textbook correct, who hasn't had the schooling, the correct, or the years having the correct schooling. First put on a pair of gloves at the age of 20, so I think it's about 10 years. So you can't really expect him to have it. And he is certainly sort of unorthodox and throws a lot of unexpected stuff. And sometimes for a guy who's well schooled, had a very good amateur career, and is used to boxing guys with kind of equal technical ability, correct technical ability, when you get a guy like Wardley, a lot of the stuff he's done can be very unexpected. You get punches from such different angles. They don't really always come in the expected combinations. They don't come from where you think. They kind of get thrown from positions you wouldn't be taught to throw them from. So that can pose its own problems. And a lot of the time it's harder for the guy who's been schooled better, because he's expecting technically correct stuff or traditionally correct stuff in return. Fabio's not always going to do that, but from Fabio's point of view, he will have been sparring guys and been fighting guys who do the textbook stuff very well and are very sort of, have a lot of ability in that area to do things correctly. So it can work out for the guy who's kind of the better school. It can almost be harder a lot of times. Don't be surprised if we see Fabio's nose blood up in this and cut up in this. I think a lot of people, especially in the Fraser Clark first fight, automatically thought Fabio's nose was gone already. Now it wasn't, and a lot of times it isn't. It's just the fact that if you remember Ricky Hatton, who had very sharp, prominent eyebrows, bones. The punch lands, and it's the compression of the skin on the sharp bones. Was the sharp bone that actually cuts the skin. That's why Ricky Hatton used to cut up, many others. But Fabio Wardley, I can only assume, for me, Fabio Wardley has got some really sharp, irregular bone. And I know he's had some surgery on that recently, or just after, I think it was the first Fraser Clark fight, or the second one, had some surgery on the nose. So they've maybe sorted that problem out. But it's the sharp, irregular bone on the bridge of Fabio's nose that, as soon as a punch lands on that slices through the skin of the nose, and it's already badly scarred tissue, and that will always breathe. But I think it's only been, I don't know how many times it's been broken, but it certainly isn't broken for the most part when most people think it is, because of streaming with blood. It's just any head wound or any wound to any extremity, especially the head, seems to bleed a lot more than anywhere else, and it's just that sharp bone. It'll probably end up cut. It'll probably end up bleeding, probably from very early on. So don't get surprised if you see that. But we tend to think if it's a broken nose, it's going to really affect the breathing. But I don't think in Fabio's case it always breaks. I know after the first Fraser Clark fight, he said the nose wasn't broken, and that indicates to me it's just down to the irregular bone and the sharp bone around the bridge, which causes the bleeding. So don't be surprised if that goes again and that ends up bleeding. I watched a preview by Joe Stunner, and Joe Stunner said he believes that basically Fabio's physicality is going to win this. And it's a great term, and it's a great, summarization, because I tend to agree. Justis Huni is very good. He's been hurt in fights, so he's been rocked in fights. And I just think, and I expect Huni to come out and really try and box clever, box behind the jab, use his movement, little fast combinations, maybe quick 1-2s followed by the hook, and do them and move and change the angles and get on his bike and stay out of the way. And I think he might. Joe also said that he thinks this could be done in 3-4 rounds. Now, I don't necessarily disagree. It very well could be. But I just expect Huni to come out and not mess Wardley about, but move about, pose Wardley the problems. And the problems you pose Wardley are good sort of basic boxing ability and movement, which is what Fraser Clark did. So I do think it'll take a few rounds maybe for Fabio to catch up with Huni. But as Joe said, and I agree, I just think the physicality in the end will win out. Huni doesn't look like he's not a puncher. He's got stoppages, but a very low level. So I just don't think he's going to have enough to deter Fabio Wardley. I mean, Fabio Wardley dropped Fraser Clark. What was the first round he dropped him in the first fight? Was it 5 or 6 maybe? So even with all of Fraser Clark's sort of technical ability, fantastic amateur credentials. Wardley still caught up with him and still dropped him. And I think it will only be a matter of time before Wardley maybe being mugged off and picked off for a few rounds by Huni. But I just think the physicality, again, as Joe said, the physicality and the sheer force, the pressure, just the punch power, I just think will turn the fight for him from the midpoint onwards. And I expect a stoppage by Fabio Wardley. And we hope to see Fabio march on. That's it. I'll see you all soon.